What is up, guys? It is Zach Plochet, and in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to organize your Axios requests. So let's jump into it. So I already have my empty project here. So we're going to create an index.html, just a basic HTML file template. And we're going to import the Axios CDN. So we're just going to type in Axios CDN, getting started. Click on the Getting Started link in the search results, and we're going to find the unpackaged CDN, or you can use any of these other methods. You just need to be able to get Axios into your project. So I'm going to grab this one. Whoops, bring that here. So like that. This is our Axios CDN, like so. All right, so now that we have that, we're also going to bring in our JavaScript file. Whoops. There we go. We're going to call it main.js here. And this is going to be the type, well, actually, no, it's not going to be a type module because we are using the CDN to import Axios. So that should be good enough. So let's make our main.js. And here, we're going to start off using so we're going to set a couple things just to make things easily customizable. And I'll show you pretty cool ways of building this. So at first, we're going to define the base URL for our external API, because typically when you're using Axios, it's for some kind of a external API from your front end code or wherever. So in my case, it's going to be my website or my own API. So api.zachplochet.com. And from this, I can reach all of the different endpoints. So right now, I think I only have two. So I have like my projects and reviews, and I'll show you how to build that pretty soon. So next, we're going to build our API client. Now, I'm going to show you how to build it in a way that is, one, it's going to be extremely easy to use, and then two, it's going to be interchangeable if you want to build it in some other way. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to call this function, and we're going to call this Axios client. And here we're going to do a few things. So we're going to say client, or we're going to say let client equal Axios.create. And inside of here, we're going to set a few attributes. So one of them is going to be base URL, which we're going to assign to our base URL up here. And the next one is going to be headers, which of course here you can fill with any headers that you typically use. Normally when you're working with JSON, you're going to say content type and set that to application/JSON. And once we have this, we're pretty much, we're good to go on just building our client here. And next, we're going to do the following. We're going to say return. And with this, we're going to make an easy way to access all of our get posts, all of these methods from our Axios instance or client or whatever. So, but they're going to be custom because normally you only want to get the data, at least in my experience. Maybe I'm wrong, but normally I've always just wanted to get the data. So let's go ahead and build this. So we're going to build these different requests, and I'll show you how. So we're going to build our own GET request. So we're returning an object that has all of these requests inside of it. So we're going to use GET, and so our GET request will have it'll take in a URL and parameters. So we're just going to call these params because that's what Axios calls it. So to use this, we're going to say the following. We're going to return client.get URL, and we're going to create an empty object, set a params attribute to whatever our params are. And this is how Axios suggests you build it. I don't know why they don't just have this as a default, but I guess there's some good reason somewhere. Either way, then we're going to use then. We're going to say response, and we just want the data. So we're just going to say return response.data. And also, we're going to then catch our error. Use the arrow function. And we're just going to console.log our error, just like that. So that's our GET request. We're going to now copy this and make our post, which can take in it's going to take in the same URL and the same data, or now it's going to take in data instead of parameters. Whoops, nope, that was wrong. I meant post. And then we're going to switch this out with data. Our response, I mean, here, I'm not sure whether or not, I don't think we need data here. So we can just, for example, console.log response if we want to. And I think we can also return response, but either way, we just want to know whether or not it worked. So that's what's going to happen here. And then we're going to catch the error in the same way. We can do a delete request. So this is going to be, so that's just going to take in the URL. And I believe, I think that's all that delete takes in. Let's see. So delete is there. So delete data, or yeah, URL data. I don't think we need data here. We just need the URL, and that should be good. Cool beans. Right. So then, yep, console log response says it's not getting anything. So there's only one GET request. We can use patch. And I believe this is the same. It just takes in data. So we just have to change this to patch and we should be good there. And we can also do put. And that's the same as patch, I believe. So change that to put, and that should be everything we need. So now, whenever you're accessing this Axios client, you don't have to rely on, like, you don't have to type all of this stuff out every time because it's already taken care of here. So if it's a GET request, you only want the response.data. In every other part, we're just, like, you don't have to console.log the response, but that's just what I'm doing right now. So yeah, essentially, like, we're just seeing whether or not it worked in our case. Now, whenever you use this, what it looks like is instead of having to use all of this then and stuff, you can just access it like the following. So you can say Axios client.get and then just use the URL params. And what this will return is the data itself. So you would say something around the lines of let data equal axios.client.get. And of course, this would also be inside of a function. So let me show you an example. And also, one thing to note, whenever I'm actually building my own applications, you can save this to an interchangeable API client. So you can say now Axios client. Oh yeah, and by the way, you will need to call it whenever you're actually using it. So you can do it like this. So yeah, there's two ways of using this now. You can either say Axios client, call it, and then say .get URL params whatever. And like this will work, or you can just also call URL. You don't need to have parameters, and that will get your request. So actually, if you want to try it already, let's go ahead and do so. And I will build a wrapper function here. So I'm going to say async function. We're just going to say get projects here. And we're going to say Axios or return, or no, we're going to say let data or let projects equal Axios client, call it .get, and we're going to just say projects because that is the path to the projects on my website. So yeah, let's see. So we're just going to console.log this projects, and with this get projects function, we can set an on-click event. So let's see. If we go into our HTML, let's just create a button. So we're going to create a button that says on click. We're going to say get projects. Get projects like so. And let's see this live. And look at our console. Okay, favicon. Okay, that's not important. Let's try it. Get projects. Okay, that didn't work. Maybe we have to call it. Try it again. All right, so it was a promise, and it was okay, right. So it was actually rejected because I just realized I don't. Yeah, it goes to a different URL where I need to use this. So what we can do instead there is a free quotes API, or actually, let's see. Yeah, I can run my Django server for this locally. So just give me 1 second. All right, so I have my development server running on my local API project. So, and let me show you how easy it is to fix this problem. So I'm going to change this from HTTPS just to HTTP localhost 8000. And now I don't have to change anything else in my code actually. So at this point, oh, also let me add the / at the end here. Yeah, so that's all I have to change now in order to get this working. So let's go here. Let's try it. Get projects. And okay, so right, we have our array already here. So that is pretty useful. Nice. Oh, also, I actually need to say await here. Totally forgot about that. So await, and let's try it now. So get projects, and boom, I have all of my projects in a nice array. So that's pretty nice. Now, another way you can use this is by doing the following. So instead of using Axios client directly, you can actually make an interchangeable one in case you want to build a version of this that works in the same fashion. Like you just set the right way to get all of the data and all of these methods here. But yeah, you can just replace like the client, and essentially you'll build like the same it's something called the facade pattern. Essentially, it makes it to where whatever your API client is, you can use it interchangeably. So typically what I do is I say const API client is equal to whatever the client that I'm using is. So if it's an Axios client, you could do it like that. And just to show you what it would look like with, I don't know, say like the fetch API, if I wanted to build a fetch client, it would be slightly different. So with fetch, we would still have our base URL, or yeah, so our well, okay, so we already have our base URL, so we may not need to do anything there. But what we can do is replace this part. So we're going to change to the second dot. Oops, that was not accurate. Okay, let's just say like here. So we can say fetch the URL, and I believe we can pass in some, I guess these are kind of parameters. Yeah, it's slightly different here. Wait, in this one, I'm just gonna do one example because it's mostly the same, just there's some slight variations. So we're gonna say like const, I don't know, parameters, something like that. And here you can define things like headers. Base URL isn't the thing on this one. So here, like we can say the same content type, application/JSON. And then you would be able to build here. So you would just pass in these parameters pretty much always. And I mean, I guess maybe we could also do params. Well, okay, so maybe we can do it like this. So we can say parameters up there and then say params here. Okay, so I don't remember, unfortunately, everything about how to use fetch, but if you wanted to just build a simple version, you could just have like just get the URL, forget about the headers, which yeah, I just don't remember the syntax off the top of my head. But either way, like a different thing that fetch does is instead of using response.data to get your data, it uses response.json, and then you have to call it. So yeah, it's kind of a mini example, but there is a way to build it. If you're interested, I will make a video on it and study that. So either way, let's use our Axios client. So essentially, now we have this API client that we don't have to call it in order to use it. So we can just replace this, and you see how we're calling it here. Now it's just going to be API client.get projects, and then we'll be able to get our projects. And essentially, like you could return this, return projects there, and then say, I don't know, make another function called print or log projects. And this would just do get projects like so. And let's see what happens. So change this to log. Okay, so right. Yeah, so we will have to make this async as well in order to use it properly. Which funny enough, if we do that, we don't have to make the other one. But either way, so we can just say await get projects, go back, and let's do it. There we go. Now it is working how we want it. So that's nice. So yeah. So this API client right here is probably the most important part of at least the first part of this video. So recently, every time I'm using Axios for anything, I am building first or using any kind of like API, but it's mostly Axios. I will be building this same structure because this becomes extremely convenient. Let's see. So that's get projects there. And yeah, and like it doesn't have to be async here. It just has to be async whenever you actually want the data. So like the only reason I had it there before is because we were just console.logging it immediately. But like now, if I say function get projects and it says return project, all this normal stuff, and actually shouldn't say return like that. Yeah, well actually wait, that did work. Huh. Okay, I funny enough didn't think you could build it like that. Or I don't know. Either way, um, yeah, so you don't have to use async await like directly on the part where you actually use this. You just have to call it on pretty much the last function that uses it. So if I want to log these and I don't want to promise, I would just say async log projects like so, and then console.log await get projects. Yeah, so pretty straightforward. Bleep. Oh wait, yeah, there it goes. Nice. Okie dokie. So yeah, so this is one method of organizing all of this stuff. So now that you have your API client, yeah, like immediately you can build these helper functions that are just like easy getters or posters or whatever. We could also make this say parameters. So take in the params part and pass the params here. And this becomes much simpler because now you don't have to remember to write this syntax. So whenever you say get projects, if you want a specific set of projects, we could go inside of here and say, actually, let's see. So I could say like featured equals true, for example. So let me build that once again. Log projects. Then say console.log get projects with the parameters inside of it. Make that await and go back. Call it. Oh wait, why is it not defined? Log projects takes in params, doesn't return anything. Maybe I just didn't save log projects. After argument list. Oh, did I forget something? Nope. No, that should work actually. So let's see. Uncut log projects is not defined. Line 14. I see where it is. I just don't understand why it's that way. Right, async. But I don't, is that why it's breaking? That's weird. Oh yeah, that was why it's breaking. Let's see. So, okay, let's see. So we are logging projects. Change that to let. pass in the parameters, and then console.log the result of this one. So that will be our async function. And why? Okay, that's weird because now it's only, there should be like, oh, maybe on this one I only have one. Okay, yeah, so it is working, just there's only one featured project. And what about active? So if I change this to active equals true, and I try it again, there we go. Yeah, so now I have 14 active projects. So this is kind of like a filter. It just adds parameters onto your search. So if we look at the network tab, we will see whenever you add parameters, it will go right, localhost projects with active set to true. And that's how you can set this pretty simply. So yeah, parameters are cool if you have some filtering going on in your API. Otherwise, you can just say log projects without anything and it will still work. But yeah, it can take in those as optional. So yeah, you can use these help functions and you can do the same for post. So something like post projects, params, or actually, no. So here, this would only need like data if you want it to be simple. So you have a simple, a simple function that you can use whenever you want to get this data. So then you would just, essentially, you could return something, but api.client.post and the same projects. But now you just have your data here. So whenever you use it, you don't have to think about like adding whatever the endpoint is. You can just say post projects. And ideally, this isn't some kind of a, actually, well, no, because you're posting data, I don't think that technically has to be async. So I think in this case, you're actually fine. Now, all right, so that's one way is just creating these helper functions. So this can be like method one, helper, or I don't know a proper name for this, so I'm just going to call it helper functions for now. Maybe one day when I'm more enlightened when it comes to Axios or this kind of a setup in general, I will tell you a better name. So for now, I'm just calling this helper functions. Now, those are useful. I'm going to push those way to the bottom so we don't see them like that. Well, okay, that's a little more. All right, cool. So then there's another way to do this, which is this is something more preferable in my opinion. So you don't have to write every single one of these helper functions. You can just have an easy way to access it by default. So check this out. This is going to be method number 2, and this can be, I guess, like API object. So how this starts, and there's actually 2 versions of this, and like let's call this like number 2 API objects, and then we're going to have number 3, which is going to be like a model object, which is probably my favorite one that I've used so far. So again, step 1, create the client, set API client to whatever. Then you're able to build all of these a lot easier. So then you can use one of these methods. So method 1, method 2, and method 3, like so. Now, so now we're going to build the API object, but both of these will require the following. So you can call this either URLs or models. For the API object, I typically call this URLs if I'm doing it this way. So what this is it's a JavaScript object where essentially you're going to call the model name or like the endpoint name that you're kind of looking for. So if it's projects, you're going to say projects. And then as the key or as the value, so the key is going to be however you want to access that URL through your API. And this is going to be the endpoint where like from your base URL where you're going to be able to access that data. So we have our projects, and I know I also have reviews. So I can use both of these endpoints and they should both work. Now, let's build our API object. So I'm going to say const API, or actually, it can be a constant. And what we can do here is say const API is equal to an object, and inside of this object, we're going to do the following. So we're going to say let yeah, honestly, we can even do it like this. So we can just create our methods like here. So this is going to take in, so instead of having the specific item or like the specific URL, you're just going to pass in the item to it. So our URLs here is going to be projects and or reviews or whatever. So just instead of a URL, you're going to pass in the item or I mean, I guess you could say model in this case. So, but let's just call it item for now, and then model I'll reserve for this model one, which I think you may or you might like more. So let's see. So that's going to take an item and parameters. So now that we have our API client, we can say API client dot get or return dot get. Then we can say URLs, pass in the item to get that specific item's URLs, and then we can say pass in the params as well. And that's pretty much it. So you can do that with post. So post the item, get the data. And this is just a more generic way to where you don't have to write out every single helper function for that. So I'll show you what I mean. Because we have this URLs part right here, if I say now, and actually I'll just build this one just so you see it, return or API client dot post URLs that item, and then pass in the data. Or if you want to be even more, I guess you could call this tidy. You could say URL. Well, actually, yeah, that would actually work. So yeah, we could say URL and then say, oh wait, no, it wouldn't. Never mind. Sorry. Yeah. So let's see. So this is how you would get an item, and then we can also say get. Write something like get specific item. So this is if you only want one of them and you don't need these parameters. So whatever the item is, and then like the ID, let's call it. So now we can let our URL, and actually that might be an easier way to look at it. Let the URL equal URL's item. So now we can just say URL there, and same thing here. But in this case, we're going to say, oops, like this. We're going to have, so these are backticks, and this is how you make a dynamic string in JavaScript if you don't already know that. But we're going to have URLs. We're going to get the main and the main endpoint, and then we're going to add our ID to the end of this. So ID, like so, and make sure you notice that where I'm putting my forward slashes here. So I'm putting it on the front of the base URL and on the end of these endpoints. If I didn't have this, if I didn't have the forward slash up here, I would have to change these as well to backslashes. Otherwise, you'll get some weird, you'll make the wrong request and you'll get a weird error. So let's add that back. So let's keep going here. So get specific. Yeah, so this is essentially how I would build this URL, and this would translate to something like, I'll show you in JavaScript. It would be like https or api.mysite.com / projects, for example, and then the ID. So projects 1, just for example of what this would end up being. So then we can say return pretty much the same thing, API client.get, and then just the URL. And that would get a specific item. And I'll show you that it's a bit easier to access. So now, whenever you want to access your data, you can essentially say like this. So again, this would, funny enough, you would still probably end up putting this in some kind of a get or an async function. I normally use Vue, and Vue has something called mounted or on-mounted lifecycle hooks. So at some point, it would become, you would need to make it async, but you just don't have to do it here. You can do it like this. Like if you wanted to rebuild these like projects things, for example, which normally you would just use a lifecycle hook, or at least I do. But say you want to put a wrapper over it, an async wrapper, you would just do the following. So now whenever you access it, you do it like this. So API get, I want projects, and then, or you can just get all of the projects. So then you can say API.get like this, or if you want parameters, featured is true. So all of the projects whose featured attributes are true, assuming you have filtering set up on your API. You can also get a specific one. So get specific and then pass in the ID to get that. So if I want to get the first project, let's say, or you can also, this can be interchangeable with slugs. It just depends on how your API is set up. So if I want to get a specific one, I would say const project equals that. And normally I would use await here. So API.get const projects, or let's see, featured projects. It's like that. You could also do two things. So active equals true. Or just const projects equals like this. All of these, of course, whenever you're calling them, would have some kind of await, at least ideally. Yeah, so now, like I could wrap all these in a function, async function, get all, or I don't know, log all types of projects. It's a horrible name, but essentially you could do this if you wanted to, and then do whatever with the data that you get back. So yeah, console.log projects, featured projects, and projects, all of which would be valid. So you know what? We'll actually do it. So log all, wait, what do they call it? Log all types of projects. Log all types of projects. Then I would call it, go back to our HTML and go to network or console and run it. Yeah, so here's the first array. Here's the single featured item. And then here is the actual a specific object itself. So we have access to all of these attributes, so they all worked. So yeah, like basically you just have an easier way to access multiple of these, and it's pretty nice. So next, and I'll keep this just as the usage example. And now we're going to move on to the last one, but what is so far my favorite, and that is models. So essentially you end up writing the same thing as APIs, and you can actually write this specific part in pretty much the same way. So yeah, these are pretty much interchangeable. Just minor details are what I'm changing. So I'm going to change this to models here. I'm going to remove the S off of these so they're not plural anymore, but I will keep the endpoints like so. Now I'm going to create a function called model. That's going to take in a model name. So essentially this is now the model name and this is the endpoint. And it's actually the same up here, just here I did plural because I don't know, to me that kind of makes sense. So you don't have to think about where the forward slashes go. But in this case, it's actually going to be the model name. So now we're going to do like this. So first we're going to say let the URL equal, of course, models model name. And you could call that endpoint. I'm calling it URL because I can. So with this, we're actually going to do the same return part, kind of like we did up here with our client. So we have our API client. And yeah, now we're going to define like this. So again, well, actually now all this is going, all our get request is going to take in is just optional parameters. So we're going to return the API client dot get. We're going to take in the URL as well as the parameters, like so. Because we already defined our URL up here, and it becomes something similar to Django in a way. And like, for example, you could actually change this to list, and this would be a type of list view. And then we could actually define a get method. So let's say like we have a list and a get method. So get is for getting a specific one, list is for getting everything. Or like you could call it detail or whatever. I'm calling it get right now. And all this is going to take in is the ID because we already have the URL once we call it. Return API client dot get. And now our URL is going to change. So we're going to say URL is equal to call the URL, but with our ID inside of it and the forward slash at the end. And of course, this one takes in no parameters. And then the same with post. And now all we have to do is say, or take in the data. So now it would be return API client.post and the data. Oh yeah, we would pass in our URL still like that, but we're just not passing it here. So what this one, which is, I'll show you why it's my favorite, and I think you'll understand. So if I want to access my reviews, I will say it like this. I will now say const project, or let's say projects first. I will say const projects equals model project dot list. That will get me all of my projects. If I want featured projects, I can go to my list and just add the parameters. And this way I always know that it's essentially an array. So featured, set featured to true, active also to true, like so. And then let's see, if I want only one project, I can say const project model, the same project. So it's always going to be the same model. And then we can say get and just the ID. So I want the, let's say my third one. So whatever the third project is, I want that one. And also for reviews, reviews equals model review dot list. So I want all of my reviews as well. So let's do this now. We're going to say log all data, and then we're just going to log all of this. Again, of course, it's going to be async, so we would put the await in front of the model part. Like so. And now let's just console.log all of it, make sure that it's working. So projects, featured projects, project, and reviews. Also, we can get a specific review. So const review equals await model review dot get number 1. And now let's add it here. So we're going to console.log all of this data. So let's go back here. Oh, also add async at the beginning because we're using await. And now let's go here, log all data, like so. And yeah, I think that is everything. Also, let me make sure. Yeah. Yep. So that looks right. Yeah. So now it becomes a bit easier to use these. And of course, if you want, you can technically still make helper functions. Just now you don't have to think about like all of the details that we were doing before. So like projects, like remembering the endpoint, and like they're all useful. So that's why I can't say like one is better than the other. It just depends on how you want to build your data. So yeah. So let's try it. So let's go here, open up the side, call it, and boom. All right, so let's see what we got. So these are the projects. That's the featured projects, which on my local one, there's only one. Development agency. So yeah, this is a specific one. This is my, yeah, that's just a specific project. Bada-bum. These are the reviews. This is, let's see. Yeah, and this is a single review. So this is, yeah, so all of the data ended up showing up. And honestly, at this point, that's pretty much it. So they're just different accessors, I guess you could call them, different ways of getting your data and keeping it organized and having to use Axios' direct API, which can be a bit messy. So I'm going to post this part here. So again, method 1, these accessor functions or helper functions or whatever. Accessor sounds fine. So accessor functions. This is how to do the API version of this. More so focus on this part for actually using it. And then the models, which is my favorite so far because it kind of is similar to Django. So yeah, essentially you call a model, then the project itself and how you want to access it. And of course, because this would be an array, you can also just say like const featured projects equals project.list, or sorry, filter get your project, and then say project.featured double and project.active, or double ampersand. And this would also be another way, but that's more of like a JavaScript thing. So yeah, you can do it this way as well. That is equally valid. So yeah, I think that's everything I have to teach today. So yeah, that is the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on Code Mentor or just in the comments. Either one works. I'll leave a link to my Code Mentor in the description. Yeah, thanks for watching. Let's see, any updates? I'm building my website a bit more. I'm trying to, I'm just getting the email field to work. So pretty soon I will have the email field. And yeah, either way, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and bye for now. Boop.